Believe it or not, prostitution is rife within Ireland at the moment, and it's extremely difficult for me to try and find someone who's been there, who's gone through it, to be honest enough to come in and actually share their experiences. Today in Ireland, there's going to be hundreds of women coming out offering their services both on the streets of Dublin and all the other capital cities, or all the other actual cities, Dublin, Cork, Galway, and there's going to be about 850 women who'll be offering their services online. So I really want to say thank you to Mia DeFuisha, who's come in today to talk about her experiences working in Ireland as a prostitute. Mia, thank you so much for coming in and having a chat.
No problem.
Would it be okay to run back to, I suppose, your past, where you came from? I know you're from Clondalkin in Dublin.
Yeah.
And just talk to me and us a little bit about your journey.
Yes, I grew up in Clondalkin village, and pretty typical childhood, I suppose. But I was quite a quiet child, quite distant,
Okay.
quite maybe odd, they used to call me back then, but you know, there was loads of kids. I had two sisters, we were out playing or whatever, but I did prefer to be on my own. I suppose I was a bit of an existential child, but and then I experienced child sexual abuse when I was a kid, and that had...
What age would you have been when
I
you
was
experienced it?
6, 7 when
You
it
were
started.
very small.
Yeah, I was very young.
Okay.
And until I was 11.
It went on for a period
yes,
of years.
And so anyway, that had a detrimental effect really on me. It was older children, so I didn't know where to place that, because on the one hand you like to have friends and you like the big kids, and on the other hand you knew, even though you didn't have words for it, that what was happening was not
okay.
not okay. I didn't feel okay, and so really that sort of came out sideways because I'd nowhere to put it, so to speak. So I was very introverted.
So the introverted child, Mia, became even more introverted.
Yes, and you had big questions about the world and humans, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand any of it. So.
And you couldn't tell anybody?
No. And of course it was the late 70s and that, so it really wasn't spoken about at all, anywhere really, I don't know. There's no words for it I ever heard. So I buried it, but when you bury it, it comes out somewhere
along the line.
So
yes.
with me it was, yes, that disconnection, introversy, and then self-injuring played, because I couldn't heal the pain inside, like psychologically, because I didn't understand it or have a grasp of what I was doing. But when I felt physical pain,
yeah,
it removed it.
Yeah,
it removed it.
Yeah.
And
did you start self-harming on your arms or on your legs? Do you remember?
It was my arms mainly,
Yes.
my hand, my head. I got a bit. Sounds quite odd now, but this, if you remember, was just a little kid trying to make sense of the world. But I turned, the only person I could was kind of not in this world as so, God as such. And I remember, and then of course it was Ireland, so I was looking for a reason for this cruelty and in the world. I couldn't understand it. So I became interested in saints and stuff, and a lot of them were self-injurers, and so for me it was the physical pain took away, gave me an answer, but also it was this you hear, offering up your pain for the sins
offering
of others.
Offering up your penance,
For
absolutely.
the sins of the others. Now I didn't think I had done, I knew I wasn't the one who's done it, but I what stuck in my head as a kid was, they know not what they do. So these religious figures offered up suffering for the ones who didn't know what they did.
Okay.
If you're with me now, I know that sounds a bit, but I was a kid.
It does make sense.
But it made sense to me to start that. So my self-injury at the start as a kid was quite copying of saints. Thorns in my head like Catherine of Siena, and at Talbot they tie things around my waist and pull them really tight. They were copying that.
Yes.
So I thought, if I suffered this, then that pain, that pain
meant something.
It meant something.
Yes, I understand.
So I know, but it did make sense to me back then. It makes sense to me now, looking back, because it was just a kid with no sort of place to go to look for this. Nobody spoke about it, and yet I had a sense. So the only sort of place I had was that.
Okay.
And humans in that didn't trust me. So maybe the external world, was where I found some sense of it.
Solace. And then moving forward, you have a really interesting, I suppose, background, because most people think that prostitutions, if we look at the stats, happen from a very early age. People move into it normally. They're non-educated, they're from a lower class background, they move into it very, very young, from let's say 16, 15 years of age. But you yourself didn't move in to prostitution till you were 33. So now looking back, we can see the backdrop of where this perhaps came from and the harm that the sexual abuse caused. But you, in fact, were working in addiction yourself up until the age of 32. And then you went on a very different path. Can you fill us in a small bit on just that period before?
Yes, it seems like quite a
flip.
But
flip.
It didn't happen overnight.
No.
And now I can kind of connect dots. But yes, I worked as an administrator in a detox unit, a long-stay detox unit for heroin users.
Yes, yeah.
I was there from the time it opened in 1995 and until 2003. So 8 years. I loved my job. I liked working in addiction. I liked working with the people, the patients, etc. But drugs itself or addiction had never hit my own life or my family. So really, I didn't know. I knew it 9 to 5, and I knew. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, I got very close to a patient, and she left and was clean and whatever. We kept up contact, but eventually that built into a relationship.
You fell in love with her.
I fell in love with her.
The ruination of many of us.
I did completely.
Yeah.
And but she relapsed, and it's very different closing your office door at 5 and going home and not touching to coming home. I came home early one night and she was in the bedroom smoking heroin. That's very different when the person you love is there. Do you know, it's in your home, and
I can't imagine it.
It's very different.
Yeah.
It's
and you loved her.
I did, yes. Yeah. I still do. It's
I can see that. Yeah.
But anyway, so then you kind of, it isn't work situation, it is someone who's close, it's someone you care about, and now what do we do? So, but you're crossing lines really that, I never thought I would. She slipped kind of chaotically, and there was a lot of running around and money and going out in the car. So I started to make deals with her, would you, don't go out in the car, you can smoke one bag at night at home, so I know where you are, I'll give you the money, etc. But things were falling,
one thing led to another, one boundary crossed into another boundary,
and then I was buying her methadone on the street to try and detox her, but she was swallowing the methadone and getting heroin
as well.
So it was just a big, so you're trying to hang on to this life, but yet I knew it was, but it affects you, I I lost a load of weight, and my hair was falling. I was just, you know, and going into heroin. It was at night. I used to watch her, and she'd smoke this bag I'd let her smoking, and it looked like her face. You know, she hadn't a care in the world. It was just, and meanwhile I was going, Jesus, like, what am I going to do tomorrow? You know, part of me wanted a bit of that peace to sleep.
Okay.
So I remember her saying, you know, when you take a few nights, you won't get some sleep. You look terrible, you know. And at first I said, no way. Look where we are, you know. But you know, a week or so later, I did smoke a few lines, and I slept. I slept like
You'd never
a baby,
slept before.
And then I had in my head, right, I'll get a couple of nights sleep a week. Do you know, I won't get addicted. It's not for fun me. I'm not getting high or anything like this. It's just I'll get. But one night a week turns into 2, turns into 3, and about 3.5 months later,
3.5 months later, you were
physically addicted.
Physically
because I started to get sick during the day.
Sure. And then can we move into what led you into the world, the dark world of prostitution?
Well, becoming, when I got addicted to heroin, I mean, I just thought, oh my God, you know, I'm now, you know, addicted to the drug. That I helped support people come out of, like, and how did it happen? But it doesn't, like, this wasn't overnight, like, but so eventually I did tell my boss I left that job. That broke my heart. I loved it. I was there since the unit opened.
So therefore you'd no money?
It was a big...
no income after leaving your job?
Well, I got... you know, I wasn't fired, so I did get a settlement. I chose to leave as such.
Okay.
So I got a settlement and stuff. So, which is kind of... So I cleared all my debts. That's the first thing I did. You know, your car, your whatever. And... but yes, you are. Then there's no income. And my partner, my ex, like, was still pretty chaotic. And now I had no job. But personally, I lost friends, colleagues, a job I adored, you know. And my daughter, you know, it was, it was a tough time. So after a while, your money runs out. Mm-hmm. My self-esteem and all the rest, you know, was down here. And I had switched to cocaine to cope, because then I didn't have to eat, I didn't have to sleep, and I could just cope. It's another false, you know, sense, just catch-22, but money was running out. And I remember my ex had briefly been involved in prostitution a few years before with her own addiction. And when she said, you know, I was going, no, Jesus, no way. Like, but a few weeks later, I just went, oh, can I just do it, like, for, so it seemed like a rational decision. Do you know what I mean?
In your head, it seemed rational
at the time. But then I was addicted to a mind-altering substance. We don't make good decisions. That's why rehab was invented. But, and we made crap decisions for our lives, like, and, but at the time, it seemed like a rational decision. It'll be for, you know, about 3 months. I'll save up, I'll get methadone, because I always felt I couldn't go for detox or anything, because where was I supposed to go? The unit I worked, you know, so.
I just have to move on.
Yeah.
I'm just going to speed. I'm just going to.
Oh yeah, well, just hurry me up.
5 minutes left, so what I'm going to take it from now is, I'm going to just ask you about the world of it, and we can edit that back in.
Yeah.
So, Mia, what was the world? We see what led up to it. What was the world of prostitution like for you on a day-to-day basis? It's a world I still struggle to understand. I'd only ever seen it on the movies, you know. Yeah.
And it's quite, like, when I went out that first night, I took quite a bit of cocaine, because I didn't know how I was going to do it. Yeah. And I pretty much went out, like, dressed like Julia Roberts, because that's the only, and I went to Benburg Street at the start, because that's the only street I connected with prostitution. And I just stood there and I was saying, do I walk? You know, I was so naive.
You had Julia Roberts' Pretty Woman in your mind, God love you,
Yes.
and off you went.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, it was, well, I was there a while, and a car pulled up. I'll always remember the Navy Merc with a businessman, with a nice suit, a beautiful car. And I got in, and he wanted sex. And of course, I was going, shit, I never thought of that. You know, like there's some sort of progression route. You know, you start with a hand job and then I never thought, I don't know why, I never thought that the first thing I could be asked, apart, when I was worried, I said, Jesus, apart from the fact I hadn't been with a man in 11 years or 12,
Yes.
physically, like, shit, and, but anyway, we drove to the park, the car park, where, the pubs crosses in the Phoenix Park, and he gave me €100, and I just lay back, I was numb. He literally had sex with a dummy, but a weeping one, because sore.
Of course.
And just everything. But something broke inside.
Something broke in you.
I don't have a name for what that was, but all I can say is something changed that night.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you called yourself Lucy.
I did. Well, most of us pick a name. Most of them are red. I picked Lucy because it's kind of a special name to me. Reminds me of somebody. And I wanted the name that I chose to be connected with goodness. So even when they say my name, hey Lucy, will you, whatever, the name was connected with goodness. The act isn't. But the name was, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
I just spent the years trying to put in make
and it distances yourself from it as
does.
well.
Yeah.
Is distance.
Yeah, it is. Yes, and that was my father gave me that name.
And how long did you stay in that world?
Nearly 6 years.
6 years. Yeah,
just under 6 years. So mostly on the Burlington Road.
And you said it broke you.
It did.
It's
because when you're out there, like within a short space of time, your human contact with the world becomes with the men who buy you and the other damaged or addicted women who stand alongside you. So you begin to see the world in a very different way. It's like the outside world, and we know what the world thinks of us.
What does the world think of you?
We're the butt of many jokes. We're the worst insult a woman can call a woman or a man can bestow on a woman. So when you live your life as the worst insult, it's very hard to come back. And when there's no messages that were welcome back, so you remain trapped. And on the Burlington Road, sometimes the young people who come down throw eggs at us. Some people just shout when they go by. So we know. So how do you step back in? So we trust each other. And it's very hard.
But they didn't trust you initially because you said to me earlier that you sounded different.
Yeah.
They didn't trust you until they saw you in a sexual act. And then they took you into their own.
Yes.
And then you formed that
bond
with these women.
Yeah, because I was, like you said previously, most of my friends would have come from disadvantaged communities, would not have been afforded the opportunities I was. I was different. I spoke differently.
Yes.
So they were suspicious, but they did, and that was purpose on my part to allow two of them see me, catch a glimpse of me.
In operation.
Yes. And once they saw that, they knew that I wasn't some sort of researcher or something. And then everything changed, and they were really protective of me. Actually, they were very good to me. Yeah, some of the loyalist friends I'll ever have.
And how long are you out of it now?
It'll be 6 years in October 2010.
The big question is, for anyone looking, how did you survive? How did you get out?
It was a social worker. My daughter was ill at the time and had to go for some treatment, and while she was there, she met a social worker and she took to her, and she asked to see me, of course, I would have gone into her office with a very guarded front, because for the most part, any connection or interaction I had with people wasn't, you know, I know the way they look at me. And she was different. And really, she just asked me a few questions. First, she said, your daughter's a lot stronger than you think. And then she asked me, what is it like to be a mother and watch your daughter sick and feel helpless? But more importantly, she asked me, but what's life like for you? And what's it like to be out there at night all alone? And nobody had ever
Asked about you.
asked that. Of course, I couldn't get out of the office quick enough because they were too powerful, do you know. So I went home, but her words and her kindness and stuff stuck with me, do you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get. So I went back and I spent 5-6 weeks telling her what it was like to be out there at night all alone.
And that was the start.
And that was that. After
Yes.
my daughter was well enough, she was home, and she said to me, do you trust me enough to make a phone call on your behalf? And I said yes. I knew at that moment in my life that wonderful woman knew better for me than I did. And I did trust her. So
she was an angel, really, for you.
She is,
She was
yeah.
an angel
My
for you.
second granddaughter
Yeah.
holds her name.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've named your second granddaughter after her?
The second name.
Her second name. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I suppose we were also chatting that it was then the linkage was made, and we don't need to go back into that
Yes.
with you, but it was that linkage of, oh, what happened to me as a little girl that I buried is going to crop up, and you'd know where to go with it.
Yeah.
And that possibly led you down that path.
Well, it was only when I went to rehab to the Rutland and working with the clinical psychologist then for 4 months or so, you start joining.
But you have to join the dots.
You have to join. Well, I had to take a good look at myself
and your
my
behaviours
life
and your life.
Everything. And that really stuck with me, actually, to know maybe not something broke that night, but that my body as a little child had been invaded. So as an adult, even though I was 33, whatever, my body was already used to being invaded by strangers or whatever.
Yes.
So there is something that sat there. So maybe when you bought me at 40 or 38 out there, you didn't. You bought the 7-year-old that was used to. And that was it's a tough connection, but it makes sense then.
And it's so sad. But it does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on a brighter note, now you're out, you're working, you're a campaigner, you are working with Stop the Red Light.
Turn off the red light.
Turn off that red light. Can you just tell us a little bit about that work that you do at the moment?
Yeah. Well, when I left prostitute and I got better or whatever, I just couldn't justify anything I had witnessed in the 6 years, the rapes, the beatings, the abuse by myself and I had lost a couple of friends, no longer in this world, and I just wanted, I had a sense I had to go back to my friends. My life was good. I was going to university, etc., etc. But I couldn't just go on. I left them all behind. I had to go back, and who would I tell? Turns out that Ireland was, the Turn Off the Red Light campaign had been launched the same year.
Yeah.
And it is a campaign by, it's now 72 civil organisations and unions, etc. And their aim is to end, ultimate goal, like to end prostitution and sex trafficking. We have a serious sex trafficking problem here, and the last 18 months of my time on the Burlington Road, I stood alongside a trafficked woman, and she was the hardest thing for me to leave because I was her only friend out there.
My God, right.
So it was timing really. So I joined the campaign, and I just began to speak about, and all I really wanted was for people, because it is a hard subject for people to understand or to grasp, but maybe they've never come in contact or had to think about it. But so all I ever ask is that I wanted to bring people to the street, just step into my shoes and see what life was like for me, because the ability to empathise with the with the prostitute, it can be very blocked, mainly by what the media and people's ideas of us,
They
you know.
dehumanize you.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that was, and if that could help people to understand, but our ultimate goal was to do three things like Sweden or in a number of other countries, and it had proved successful, was that to decriminalise anybody who finds themselves in a position of selling.
Absolutely.
You know, because for me anyway, it's not a crime, you know, it's for your own exploitation, you know.
No.
And the other thing was to criminalise those who purchase human beings for sex. For me, it's a gross infringement of human dignity. Do you know?
Yeah.
Whether the person being bought knows that or not, that's irrelevant. Well, do you know what I mean? It's the only thing to stop the trafficking. Is, do you know what I mean? Is to look at
exactly
the
what you mean, and
demand.
to protect the little children.
Yeah, because
your inner child,
yeah,
you, and
yeah,
what happened.
a lot. Prostitution is a place where, I don't know, the damaged and those lost or struggling with the world seem to find a place. Whether it's reliving your own exploitation or trapped in it or whatever. But it's a cruel world and to exist in, and the only way, it also sends out a message that women are not for sale. Do you know that we are equal? It's the cruelest form of gender equality. Do you know?
I do mean.
So.
You know what? There's absolutely nothing I can say. I think Mia has said it all, and I hope, you know, that she's allowed us to walk in her shoes and she's humanised it for anyone that's listening and watching. Mia, you're very brave, and I thank you so much.
No,
thanks
for having me.
That was Mia DeFuici, who came in to talk to us about her story and her life of prostitution. And I hope that if anyone's looking, they can take something out of it. If they need help, they can contact the numbers that are going to be shown after this clip. Thanks, Mia.